we're taking a live look over in Jerusalem and Israel because we do want to pivot now as we follow along with the latest developments regarding the war between Israel and Hamas and the ceasefire that continues on there in Gaza. Earlier this week, we showcased as several U.S. leaders, including Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, were in Israel to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as well as Israeli President Isaac Herzog. They're there to reinforce the terms of the deal that is still ongoing in Gaza. At the same time, though, the Israeli government has been hosting several briefings throughout the week to provide their update. One of them is happening now. Let's take a look.
It is Sunday, October 26th, and today is day 751 since Hamas launched its brutal war on Israel. It has been 13 days since our 20 living hostages returned home, and we are still waiting for the return of our 13 deceased hostages that are still in captivity in Gaza. The urgency to bring them all home continues, as it's a commitment Prime Minister Netanyahu has made from the start of this war. Now, since President Trump's monumental visit here in Israel, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner have also visited the Prime Minister to discuss the ongoing plan. It's a plan that came to fruition through military and diplomatic pressure on Hamas by the Prime Minister and President Trump combined. In addition to Vice President J.D. Vance, just yesterday, his visit here, Secretary of State Marco Rubio completed his visit in Israel, which was concluded by a phone call with Prime Minister Netanyahu. The two discussed the outcomes of the visit and reaffirmed the deep partnership and circle of trust between Israel and the United States. The Prime Minister thanked Secretary Rubio for his steadfast and continued support of Israel as he remained committed to strengthening the U.S.-Israeli alliance during these challenging yet very optimistic days. The Prime Minister reiterated Israel's desire to advance peace despite ongoing security challenges, emphasizing how Israel and the United States can address these challenges and seize the opportunities together as they are changing the face of the Middle East one step at a time, like I said, together. We have 13 deceased hostages in the Gaza Strip still, which were supposed to be released nearly 2 weeks ago. Hamas committed to a plan that would release all 48 of our hostages at one time. And here we are, 2 weeks later, demanding for the release of our remaining hostages still there. Hamas kidnapped these innocent people, and it is their responsibility to bring them back home. As per the plan, Israel remains committed to. Let me reiterate what I've been saying for nearly 14 days now. Hamas knows where our hostages are, and we know they are aware of their locations. The media has taken the bait and somehow garnered empathy for Hamas, a terror organization, reasoning with their excuses that they can't locate our remaining hostages. Let it be known to the media. Israel is aware that Hamas knows where our deceased hostages are in fact located. If Hamas made more of an effort, they would be able to retrieve the remains of our hostages. Now, in full cooperation with Israel, the Prime Minister approved the entry of an Egyptian team into the Gaza Strip to assist in searching for our remains of our deceased hostages. Now, this is a technical team only, and none of these personnel are in the military. What I can share with you is the team is using between 2 to 3 excavator machines and 2 to 3 trucks to search for our deceased hostages. Now, the Red Cross and the Egyptian team are allowed entry beyond the IDF's yellow line position into Gaza territory to conduct the search for our hostages. Last week, the Prime Minister and his professional team met with the head of Egyptian intelligence here in Jerusalem to talk about the ongoing issues that need to be resolved. One of those topics was why our hostages have not all been returned yet. We are working together to execute this plan and ensure Hamas upholds their side of the agreement. The Prime Minister made it clear today at the start of a government meeting that took place this morning. Israel is an independent state and will not tolerate attacks against us, and we will respond according to our discretion. Israel does not ask for approval for this, as we control our own security. We have also made it clear that Israel will determine which forces are unacceptable to us in regards to international forces part of this plan. This is also a sentiment respected by and accepted by the United States. Now, over the last week, we continue to receive questions from the press about the next phases of this plan, which are warranted as conversations are ongoing to discuss these details. But I remind you what remains in front of us here: the release of all of our hostages, a commitment the Prime Minister has made. Sahar Baruch, Itai Chen, Omer Nutra, Amiram Cooper, Oz Daniel, Meni Goddard, Hadar Golden, Ron Gvili, Asaf Mami, Joshua Molel, Dror Ord, Sudiask Rintalak, and Lior Rudaef. These are their names, and we are working in all capacities to ensure that they come home. I will now take a few questions from you guys. Okay, so the first question is from Joel Pollack from Breitbart News. One, is Israel prepared to patrol Gaza alone if Arab and Muslim nations do not? I'll answer that very quickly for you. The Prime Minister has said, Joel, it's going to be done the easy way or the hard way, and Israel will have overall security control of the Gaza Strip. I'll point you back to the 20-point plan, which we continue to reiterate, which Israel remains extremely committed to, as we have upheld our side of the agreement. Gaza will be demilitarized, and Hamas will have no part in governing the Palestinian people. You also asked a second question. Vice President Vance said he was personally insulted by the Knesset bill on annexation of Judea and Samaria. I will simply say to you, we released a statement on this, and you can refer back to that statement. Matthew Duran from ABC Australia. Mossad and the Israeli government have just published details of a senior Iranian operative they say are behind fueling anti-Semitic attacks around the world, including in Australia. Was this intelligence provided to Australian authorities prior to the Australian government expelling the Iranian ambassador to Australia over such concerns in late August? And are you concerned these operations are still being run around the world? So I'm not going to discuss any private conversations between Israeli intelligence and the Australian intelligence as well. No need for anything like that. And we know that Iran has been trying to promote anti-Semitism around the world. This is what they have been trying to do. This is exactly what the statement says, and I will refer you back to that statement for more details on that. Lazar Berman, The Times of Israel. Given Israel's long and sour experience with international peacekeeping forces, including UNIFIL in Lebanon, why is it putting any hopes in the international security force being created inside of the Gaza Strip? So in terms of any details, like I mentioned in this briefing, Lazar, the phase 2 of this, all of these details are happening, and all these conversations are ongoing. So when it comes to this international security force or this stabilization force, many of you in the media continue to talk about, all of those details are still being spoken about. And that's one of the reasons why the American administration, President Trump, his team, his incredible team, Vice President Vance, in addition to Secretary of State Rubio, they have been here to work with Prime Minister Netanyahu and his team to ensure they are in full coordination together, which of course we are. The Prime Minister has said we are in the days of destiny. We are working through a moment together to get us to the points where we can put all of these phases into action. And I want to bring everyone back to where we are in this moment. Phase 1, which is making sure all of our hostages are returned home. Hamas made a commitment before this plan that all 48 of our hostages would be released. Here I am, standing on day 13 of when our 20 living hostages came home, and we still have 13 hostages in captivity at this point in time. This is a focus we, Israel, are currently on. And like I said, I reiterated the points about the team that Israel just allowed back into the Gaza Strip to help locate our deceased hostages. Another question, how can Israel claim to respect the freedom of the press if it continues to refuse to allow international journalists into Gaza without being chaperoned by the IDF? Elazar, if there is any change to policy on that, I will certainly let you know. But there is a lot of information that continues to come out of the Gaza Strip, specifically on social media. Of course, journalists want to get in on their own, but I have been following on social media on myself what's happening inside of the Gaza Strip. And just within the last week, I've seen a plethora of of food go inside. I've seen these bustling restaurants in large cities taking place with enormous menus as well. So there is clearly enough food inside of the Gaza Strip, as we have continued to say as well. Just going through these questions. Dan Williams from Bloomberg, is Israel pre-informing the U.S. about military actions in Gaza, such as yesterday's airstrike? If so, doesn't this risk compromising tactical secrecy, speed, and efficiency? So the Prime Minister has made it very clear today, Dan, that Israel acts as the independent state. And if there is any type of threat to our soldiers, any imminent threat, Israel will do what it takes to defend our soldiers and our citizens here. But the United States and Israel are in full coordination as we take steps inside of this plan that we are upholding, we are committed to, we are following. And like I said, we are working with the Americans hand in hand, and we will continue to do so throughout this. And also the incredible partnership between the President Trump, and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Like I said, we just had a week of their team visiting us to focus on this plan, to focus on what's going on inside of the Gaza Strip. Yael Ben-Horin from EFE, could you please give more detail about what forces would be considered unacceptable when controlling Gaza? The Prime Minister has made it clear these conversations are ongoing and details will not be shared, of course, as things are still needing to be worked out. Lior Soroka from the Washington Post. Is the Red Cross team and the Egyptian team two separate teams? I can refer you back to what I said in terms of that coordination with bringing this team beyond the IDF-CLO line to help search for our deceased hostages, because Hamas has not returned our 13 hostages yet. Okay, so these are all the questions that I see right now. Thank you all so much for joining. I appreciate your time.
So that was the Israeli government briefing that wrapped up moments ago, featuring the spokesperson for the government, Shosh Bedrosian. I want to take us out to this, a live image that we have there at the Israel-Gaza border. This is a look from southern Israel. Now, a lot of that briefing did focus on the fact that Hamas still has yet to return the remaining bodies of hostages who lost their lives after being held captured by Hamas in Gaza. The AP is reporting this, that Hamas has expanded its search for the bodies of hostages in new areas in the Gaza Strip Sunday. So today they expanded that search. That's according to Hamas. It comes a day after Egypt deployed a team of experts and heavy equipment to help retrieve the bodies. Under the fragile U.S.-brokered ceasefire reached on October 10th, Hamas is expected to return all of the remains of Israeli hostages as soon as possible. Israel agreed to give back 15 bodies of Palestinians for every body of a hostage. Thus far, Israel has sent back the bodies of 195 Palestinians. Hamas has since returned 18 bodies of hostages, but in the past 5 days failed to release any. A little bit more on the Egyptian team that is now in Gaza. It's there with a heavy equipment, including an excavator and bulldozers. They entered Gaza on Saturday to help search for the hostages' bodies, part of efforts by international mediators to shore up the ceasefire. That's according to 2 Egyptian officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak on this matter with the media. Hamas's chief in Gaza said the Palestinian group started searching in new areas for 13 bodies of hostages that remain in the enclave, according to comments shared by the group early Sunday. President Donald Trump warning Saturday that he was watching very closely to ensure Hamas returns more bodies within the next 48 hours. Some of the bodies are hard to reach, but others they can return now, and for some reason they are not. That is what he wrote via Truth Social. Hamas's top negotiator did tell Egyptian media last week that efforts to retrieve the bodies faced challenges because of the massive destruction burying them deep underground. Meanwhile, Israeli forces struck the central refugee camp in Gaza on Saturday night for the second time in a week, according to the hospital that received the wounded. The Israeli military claimed it targeted militants associated with the Palestinian Islamic Jihad group who were planning to attack Israeli troops. Islamic Jihad, the second largest militant group in Gaza, denied it was preparing for an attack. Hamas called the strike quote, a clear violation of the ceasefire agreement, and accused Prime Minister Netanyahu of attempting to sabotage President Trump's efforts to end the war. Netanyahu stressed that Israel will remain firmly in charge of its own security after accusations swirled last week that the Trump administration was directing and dictating terms of Israel's response to security concerns in Gaza. Vice President J.D. Vance denied any such speculation during his visit. We do have to step away for a quick commercial break, but more of this week's top headlines when we come back.